Go find some shade. You're probably already near it. A building, a tree, an awning. You've had water in the last hour. If the heat gets bad enough, there's a room somewhere you can go back to. The whole system is so automatic you don't even register it as a system. Now try this. For hundreds of thousands of years, your ancestors lived permanently in places where temperatures regularly hit 54 degrees Celsius, which is 130 degrees Fahrenheit. No water bottle, no sunscreen, no car to retreat to. The Sahara, the Kalahari, the Arabian Peninsula. Environments so hostile that a modern human dropped in unprepared would likely be dead before sunset. The popular image is always the same: someone wandering, desperate, squinting, barely making it. Archaeology says something completely different, something that should honestly embarrass every person who has ever complained about a warm commute. Your ancestors didn't suffer through the desert. They studied it until they owned it. The desert doesn't kill you with heat. It kills you with water loss. A human body loses roughly 1 liter of water per hour in extreme conditions through sweat alone. In the Sahara, where daytime temperatures can hit 49 degrees Celsius, which is 120 degrees Fahrenheit, organ failure begins within roughly 24 hours of your last drink. Your ancestors understood this 200,000 years ago, and their solution wasn't to carry more water, it was to need less of it. At Pinnacle Point in South Africa, dating back 170,000 years, archaeological evidence shows early humans occupying coastal cave systems specifically positioned to catch ocean breezes. The temperature difference between those positions and the open terrain a few hundred meters inland was 15 to 20 degrees. They didn't stumble onto shade. They selected it. The way a modern building engineer runs a site analysis before the first shovel hits the ground. But the more extraordinary discovery was what they carried. Across Aterian sites in North Africa, dating to 90,000 years ago, archaeologists have recovered ostrich eggshell fragments with small, deliberately shaped openings and evidence of plant fiber stoppers. These weren't food scraps, they were canteens. Each one held roughly 1 liter of water, lightweight, resilient in sand, and naturally insulating. Experimental archaeology has confirmed that water in an ostrich eggshell stays measurably cooler than water in a clay pot under the same desert conditions. The shell's microstructure acts as a passive cooling system, same principle as a modern Yeti cooler, just 90,000 years earlier and considerably lighter. And they didn't just carry water, they buried it. Sand people of the Kalahari, one of the groups whose behavior most closely mirrors deep ancestral patterns, cached ostrich eggshell containers at specific locations across their territory, marked with subtle landscape features only group members knew. Ethnoarchaeological studies from the 1970s documented caches spread across ranges of 500 square miles. This wasn't hoarding. It was infrastructure. Distributed water storage across an entire landscape, planned months in advance, maintained across generations. The desert wasn't a place they survived. It was a place they administered. Finding water in a desert sounds impossible. It isn't, if you know what to look for, and your ancestors knew exactly what to look for. In the Kalahari, certain beetles collect moisture from morning fog by standing head down on ridge crests and letting condensation run down their bodies. The sand people watched the beetles and collected from the same ridges. Fig trees in desert environments send roots toward water sources as deep as 200 feet underground. A lone fig in otherwise barren terrain is a drilling map. Certain termite mounds, built to precise orientations based on moisture gradients in the soil below, sit directly above underground water within 30 feet. Your ancestors learned to read termite architecture. At Hertoburi in Ethiopia, dated to 160,000 years ago, human remains were found clustered around a now dry lake margin. But analysis of surrounding deposits revealed the important detail. Even when the lake was dry, seasonal springs emerged along the edges for 6 to 8 weeks per year. These people weren't living at a lake, they were living at a calendar. Managing temperature across a full desert day is its own problem, and the solution was embarrassingly precise. Modern research on traditional desert populations consistently finds the same behavioral pattern that archaeological evidence confirms was already in use hundreds of thousands of years ago. Maximum movement before 9 a.m. Complete rest in shade from roughly 11 a.m. to 4 p.m. Resumed activity from late afternoon through early evening. Resting at noon isn't laziness. It's a calorie budget. Move during those hours and you burn through water reserves so fast that no cache system can compensate. Underground shelters were the extreme version of this logic. There's no single site with a neat label saying sleeping chamber. What archaeologists find instead is consistent evidence across desert-adjacent populations of shallow earth sleeping pits and wadi embankment dugouts, confirmed through ethnographic study of the sand, and other groups whose patterns mirror the deep ancestral record. The physics is why. At just 3 feet below the surface, ground temperature in desert environments stays 20 to 40 degrees cooler than the air above during the worst midday hours. The people who spent time underground already knew this. At Nazlet Khater, 4 in Upper Egypt, dating to 35,000 years ago, ancient humans dug a complex network of shafts and galleries to mine chert. They weren't mining for comfort, but anyone who spent hours in those tunnels knew exactly what going below ground felt like compared to the surface. Same principle as modern earth-sheltered architecture. The reason wine cellars work. Understood here first, tens of thousands of years ago, by people who had no other option. Here is where it gets extraordinary. The Nabateans, who controlled the Negev and parts of the Arabian desert from around 400 BC, built water harvesting systems that captured every drop of the region's rare rainfall across miles of catchment area, channeling it into underground cisterns capable of supplying a city for months. But stone-lined channels and basin structures in the Negev highlands date to 6,000 years ago and follow the exact same catchment logic. Similar structures across the Sahara go back even further, to periods when ancient populations were laying down engineering knowledge their descendants would refine over millennia. The Nabateans didn't invent desert water engineering. They inherited it. Clothing in the desert works on a principle that looks completely wrong until you understand the physics. Full body coverage, long, loose, light-colored layers. Modern instinct says strip down. Physics says the opposite. Loose fabric traps a buffer of air between skin and superheated air outside. It creates shade across the entire body surface and slows evaporative water loss dramatically. Bedouin clothing runs on this exact principle today. Archaeological textile evidence from desert-adjacent populations 10,000 years ago shows the same layered loose weave structure. Nobody worked this out from thermodynamics. They worked it out from dying when they got it wrong, until only the people who had gotten it right were left. Here's the detail that will stay with you. The sand people of the Kalahari, when tracking prey across open desert, run in the midday heat, on purpose, when no other animal can. Humans are among the most efficient endurance runners on Earth. In extreme heat, we sweat to regulate body temperature in a way that four-legged animals simply cannot sustain. A kudu overheats and stops after a few miles. A human keeps going. The persistence hunt, chasing prey over hours of midday running until it collapses from heat exhaustion, is not a desperate last resort. It is an exploit. Your ancestors found a design flaw in the desert's ecosystem and ran it for hundreds of thousands of years. Think about that. The worst conditions the desert could produce, temperatures that shut down every other predator, were the exact conditions your ancestors chose to hunt in. Go back to the shade you're sitting in. The cool air around you right now is the endpoint of a problem your ancestors spent 200,000 years solving by hand. The water you drink without measuring it. The shade you find without calculating where the sun will be in 3 hours. The room you retreat to without ever needing to understand what cool costs in a place where there is none. The Sahara hasn't changed. It's still 3.5 million square miles of stone and sand and air hot enough to kill a person in a day. What changed is that you inherited solutions so completely road-tested by the lives and deaths of 100,000 generations that the problem is invisible to you. The next time the heat hits and you reach for that button without thinking, remember what it took to get there. Somewhere in your past, someone ran through 120-degree air at noon, watching beetles, reading termites, knowing exactly where the water was buried 6 months ago, wearing the right clothes for physics reasons they never needed to name. They didn't outlast the desert. They figured it out.